Apple's Vision Pro has been out for a couple of weeks now, so let's figure out whether it's the greatest invention in the history of mankind or whether it's going to be sitting on a shelf in a year or so. Next up on Today in Tech. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Today in Tech. I'm Keith Shaw. Joining me to discuss as much as we can about the Apple Vision Pro is an all-star panel of writers and editors, including Jason Cross. He is a senior editor at Macworld. Michael Dagonia. He is a contributing writer for Computerworld. And Mike Simon, executive editor of Macworld. And Jason and Michael have tested and reviewed the Apple Vision Pro. And Mike, you have gone to an Apple store, correct, to demo it out. Is that right, Mike?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay. So over the past couple of weeks, we've seen a bunch of mixed reviews on the device. Many people seem to be impressed by the technology itself, but then are also struggling to find value in the device for different purposes. What are your thoughts about having had the device for a few weeks now? Jason, I'll start with you because you had a really good review on Macworld.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, you're in your intro. You're like, is it the greatest thing ever, or is it going to be sitting on the shelf in a year? And I'm like, are those our only two options?
Well, those are the extreme options, Jason. It's somewhere in the middle, I'm sure.
I really think it's going to be somewhere in the middle for a while.
Okay.
It is the briefest summary I can come up with of it is it's impressive, but it's not good.
Okay.
It needs a lot of software work to be good. You know, it doesn't enhance your productivity much unless you really need a virtual display for your Mac, and that's hardly a reason to buy one of these things.
Okay.
And that comes down to a lot of software stuff and everything. The technology on display, the hardware itself and what it can do and how well it does it is top notch.
Right.
It's incredible. And if you've used Quest 3s and stuff like that, there are so many areas in which you're going to go, wow, this is so much better.
Yeah.
This is, and as it should be, it costs 7 times as much. But
Michael,
they're doing a lot of very impressive things.
Yeah. Yeah. Michael, what was your impressions having had this for a couple of weeks now?
My impression is that it surprisingly lives up to the hype.
Okay.
Apple execs demoed the spatial computing, and this product delivered it. Is it perfect? No. Is it for everybody? No, not this version.
Yeah.
But this hardware, the way it is now, gives us a really good sneak peek of Apple's vision of computing. And I can see this becoming easily another platform right alongside their Macs and iPads.
All right.
Yeah, I've seen, I've been using various VR stuff for years, and they've been introducing video pass-through and AR and stuff, and I've demoed HoloLens and all these things, and none of them gave you that gut feeling, that just sort of in your lizard brain feeling that like, oh, I get it. Like I get what they mean by spatial computing. I get what they mean by like why I'm going to use this every day. And this one does. You start floating windows around, you start using them, you see how they just appear to be there in your environment. Like that window is there. It's casting a shadow. It is razor sharp.
The seamlessness between the reality and your data and content. It's amazing.
So it's great. I mean, the video pass-through still needs work.
Right. But the video pass-through to focus on the quality of the cameras is kind of missing the point of the video pass-through, because the low latency is really what makes this magical.
So it really does. And you get that feeling. You go like, oh, this is gonna be great. But to me, that's the key. It's gonna be great.
So for both of you, so for both Michael and Jason, you did have that wow moment when you put it on, or at least some part of the review when you were using it, you did have that wow moment, correct?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
For me, I was just surprised that the execution of the concept was strong as it was. It's like the first time you see Steve Jobs swiping on the iPhone, just like, whoa, I want that.
Yeah.
That's, for whatever reason, I want that. And that's kind of what this is. It's not, again, affordable for most people, but it's one of those things that you can see, that you say, hey, I want, now that I see that it's possible, I want that. So, cheaper.
Yeah.
Cheaper with more software support, things like that. But impressive start.
Yeah. And now Mike Simon,
a lot of the soft. Go ahead.
well, Mike Simon, when you went to the Apple store to try it out, did you have a similar feeling? Was the demo, did they run you through a demo just to get you to that point where you might have a wow moment?
Yeah, they hit up all the high points.
Yeah.
You know, the immersive environments with watching movies, 3D stuff, the so-called immersive experiences where it looks like you're, you know, walking with rhinoceroses or hanging out with Alicia Keys while she plays music. It's all incredible. The technology is fantastic. What's interesting about it, and why there's a whole bunch of articles right now about people who are returning them within Apple's 2-week window,
Sure.
is that like the device and the concept isn't quite there yet. Michael was just saying, like, it's going to be, it will be, you can see, and absolutely you can. But where the original iPhone was a phone that you could take everywhere and use in the way that it's supposed, this one you can, you know, you're not supposed to walk around with it. And even if you do, you can't do much with it. There's no cellular connection. There's, you know, the windows don't anchor to you when you're walking around. So it's not made for that yet. But 3 years, 5 years from now, whenever it is that we get there to this vision that Apple has for spatial computing, it's going to be amazing. What's interesting about Vision Pro now is that Apple doesn't usually release products that aren't ready for what it wants it to be.
Yeah.
But this isn't. It's just not there because it can't be yet.
Yeah.
But all of the pieces are you know, visible. They're just not, they're nowhere really near in place just yet.
Mike, when you did the demo and were able to put the headset on, did that change your mind at all about whether or not you would buy this for yourself?
I mean, I was very impressed. If it was $14.99, I might consider it.
Yeah.
At $4,000, it is a big expense. And
Sure.
even if I could, you know, even if $4,000 is like an impulse buy for you, and there's a lot of people where it is, you get the sense that the hardware has to change as much as the software. So in 3 years or so, you're going to probably need to buy a new one to do what Apple wants us to do with it. For example, I just said before, the most glaring omission is there's no 5G connectivity. So
Right.
if you want to use it outside for anything, you need to connect to it with some kind of a Wi-Fi hotspot. It doesn't have that kind of all over networking, which is what it's going to need to reach that next level.
All right, so let's. I want to ask about the business aspect of it, where, you know, in the demos that we've seen from Apple and some of the marketing was all about kind of having knowledge workers using this in an office scenario. I get all of the entertainment stuff. I understand that whole sitting on a couch watching a movie, and it feels like they've hit on those markers. But, you know, do you feel like there's a benefit for use of this in a business scenario? Maybe not just for knowledge workers that are sitting in a cube typing on their computer, but also, you know, in a professional setting, like maybe doctors or therapists or other types of non-industrial, non-manufacturing, because they have other options as well. I can't see a company spending $3,000 or $3,500 on something that they're going to put it on a factory floor. I think you would probably go for something less expensive there.
A good use case for this in the enterprise, I think, would be any situation in which a computer has to be interacted with, but also some hands-on, you know, you're doing hands-on work on the environment.
Or hands-free for the computer part, but hands-on for something else.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, because now you can see instructions, you can see real-time data, you can see schematics, you can see anything at a glance in line with what it is that you're doing. And you can interact with the computer, again, without actually touching a computer. That's phenomenal.
Yeah.
That opens
And unlike so many of these other things like Quest, you don't have to stop and pick up controllers to manipulate this thing. Like, it's your eyes, it's your hands. You don't have to switch gears to do something. I think it's, to his point, it's like it will be, right? There's a big will be factor. It's not right now. The productivity aspect is it's a Mac virtual display. You can do things like put a Safari window over here and your messages over there and stuff, but using them in your spatial computing space isn't faster or easier or more productive than just using the window on your Mac. And you're going to need a keyboard and a mouse. Text input is terrible is so slow. It's poking out URLs at best.
Yeah.
So
what's nice about
they
connecting
got a ways to go on these things. Yeah.
Yeah. But what's nice about connecting to like a Mac to use as a virtual display is then now all of a sudden you can use your Mac keyboard to type in the apps. And
but the downside is you have to. If that's the case, use productivity scenario, all the productivity is coming from your Mac, not from this thing. So if you really need a large display and you can't have one where you are, you can't just buy a monitor, you can't buy a second monitor, something like that. It's good for that. It doesn't extend your display. It replaces it. It's not a second monitor. It's got issues. Where I think it's going to be really, really useful if the software gets there is in things like medical imaging and stuff like that, where you want to see a 3D model of a scan, you want to show it to somebody else. There's problems right now where if I have two people in the same room with an Apple Vision Pro, we cannot both look at the same virtual object.
Right.
Like we can't both see it from both sides and point at it and go like, well, what about this here? What is it? There's none of that.
Yeah.
So there's software stuff that needs to happen to enable that. It's all very early. Obviously, all these medical imaging, I mean, they're working now. They released it so they could now have a bunch of researchers and programmers and everybody buying this stuff and working out what are these apps going to be. I don't know if anyone wants to perform I don't know if the video pass-through is good enough to like perform surgery with it on, but I can see a version where it is, where it's that good and they can have your MRI 3D MRI scan open while they're performing surgery and look. And it's going to help them be more precise about what they're doing when they're cutting in you. And it's right there in 3D. They got their hands free. Like that kind of future is very easy to see.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we've also seen things like where surgeons use virtual reality type of headsets to practice, or so that you're not cutting open a live body. But I'm wondering if that maybe there's an augmented reality, where you're seeing it, you're doing that video pass through, but then you're also seeing other stats on the screen while you're doing it.
I imagine medical students, when they get to the point where they're working on cadavers and stuff like that, being able to have, well, here's what it looks like as living tissue, here's what it is and stuff, while they're working on the actual cadaver and stuff like that.
Yeah.
To have tactile feedback and real thing. Like that could be incredible.
Right.
But again, we're always using this future tense term. It could be incredible.
Yeah.
It can be. Well, it's right there. You can feel it's right there. It's doing everything at the 0.9 beta version of what it needs to do to just be what it needs to be.
Yeah, there's a lot of examples in the App Store already of, let's say, hearts for medical students that you can and see the flow and things like that. There's presentation tools that you can put an F1 racing car right in front of you and take that apart and see, and this is all stuff that sounds like it's futuristic, but it's happening now. It's happening now. And that's neat.
Yeah.
Apple, and not only that, but this has the backing of Apple. You know what I mean? Yeah. It slides right into their ecosystem and it's like you said, it's not a monitor. It's not like it's a monitor replacement. It's an entirely new computing concept, and that's the thing that I guess we're going to have to see how Apple progresses.
Right.
Because it's not just like a variation of an iPad or an iPhone. This is its own separate thing.
Yeah.
And I think I'm impressed by what it is, and I'm excited about what it will be. I think the next few years will bring excitement to computing again.
Cool. And Jason, you mentioned in your review the apps that were available did not, well, there's a lot of them available, but you felt like they were just kind of overlays of iPad apps, or they didn't really take advantage of the spatial computing component of it. Did that surprise you, or is that expected because developers probably haven't had a lot of time between getting, the announcement and then getting the headsets and then getting the app ready?
It is a little expected, at least for the third-party apps, that there's no, they've had dev kits for a short time. They've been using simulators. So when I open up Carrot Weather and I'm like, this kind of looks like the Carrot Weather iPad app. It's a floating window. It's neat that it's floating in my living room and it looks very neat, but I could do this on my iPhone or iPad.
Yeah.
And then you can kind of open up this little globe view, but that's not a useful weather tool. It's like, oh, that's neat. I'm never going to open that again, but that was cool. what surprises me is how limited Apple's own support is for spatial experiences, even in their own apps. A lot of the apps are just iPad apps that you can run.
Can you give an example?
Like, yeah, I'll give you a few examples. So they did a really good job with Keynote. Keynote, you're not going to edit presentations on this thing, at least without hooking up a keyboard and a touchpad, because that's murder. But they let you practice your presentation in a virtual hall, like a auditorium, right? That's a great case for how to do this. Why does Apple Music not have like a virtual nightclub or concert hall? Why is there no Apple Music Classical where I can watch a virtual orchestra play the music I'm listening to? None of those things are there. It just seems there's no Apple Store app, like to go buy Apple gear like there's on iPhone and iPad. Why isn't there one that looks like a virtual Apple Store?
Wow,
like
yeah.
Walking into an Apple Store. Like there's so many, just go down the list of every Apple app and it's like, well, Messages is just like your floating messages window like it would be on an iPad. That's fine, but that's not a reason to have spatial computing. And there are so many ways they could have done that, and it's not there yet. So I'm really interested to see, what do they do when they start updating all these apps? What do they do when they start building things like they did in that Keynote app, where they go like, well, yeah, it's Keynote, but it also does this spatial thing. And that's just missing from so many apps. So many apps are a floating iPad app window, essentially.
But again, so you're looking at the potential of what could happen with the next iteration.
It doesn't even need to be new hardware in that case. Those are software updates. They could do that now.
Yeah.
It's just where's the app update? So we'll see. I think Vision OS 2, which I'm sure they'll announce at WWDC this summer and come out this fall. That will probably be long before they have a second generation headset. I'm really interested to see what they do with there, because they're going to have a lot of information about how are people using this, what's missing, what do they need to add.
And I know that Apple has a long-term roadmap for this device. So this question might just be stupid on my part, but do you think that Apple has done enough with this first iteration to get us down that roadmap? Because I can't ever imagine them just saying, oh, well, we didn't sell enough, or all right, guys, it didn't work. Like, do you get a sense that they've done enough with this first iteration? Or I guess maybe the question is, how soon do they have to then get the next version out, whether it's on the software side and on the hardware side? Mike Simon, I wanted to see if you wanted to had any thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty clear that this is as close as Apple's going to get to like a so-called moonshot product, in the sense that they don't know if it's going to be successful, and there's really no measure for it. Sales is not it.
Yeah.
Like, they're not going to look at the first year sales and say, well, forget it, we're just going to scrap this thing because we didn't sell enough. It's about getting the technology out there, getting into developers' hands, obviously, and also to get people interested and aware of what spatial computing is. I mean, I know Oculus, Meta, they sell I don't know, maybe 1 million, a couple million a year. Like, it's not more than that. So it's like, it's out there. But VR is not a household term, not like an iPhone. Right. Smartphones weren't a household name until the iPhone. iPads weren't a household name until tablets weren't until the iPad. So with Vision Pro, it's a much more difficult climb to get people accustomed to the idea of putting something on your face and then using whatever is in front of your eyes as your interface, as your desktop. So I think we're looking at probably a 5-year plan. I wouldn't be surprised if we don't see Vision Pro 2 until like 2026.
Wow. Okay. That so I was thinking that you would have that Vision Pro 2 would be out next year. Like, you would have a 1-year cycle, but you're saying a potentially. Oh, it's 2024, so it's a 2-year cycle. Never mind.
Yeah.
I'm thinking 2026 is like 5 years into the future.
Yeah, they launched it so early this year that I could see there being a 18-month thing. I could see something being late next year. Yeah. That's almost 2 years, right? That's.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, you can still do software updates, right? To
right.
address some of those software issues.
I think that's how they're going to measure success. It's like 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 Mike said, it's not how many they sell, because Apple measures success in tens of millions of products, and that's not going to be it. Like, it's about, can they keep interest up, both among developers? Are developers going to put the effort to really do? Because like Michael said, it's a different way of computing. You can't just throw your iPad up on there and just expect it to be good. You've got to make new spatial, like, why does this have to be spatial experiences?
Yeah.
That takes a lot of effort. Can they keep the developers interested? And can they keep the people interested enough that when the second version comes out and it's a little more affordable and the software is better and everything, they're excited to get one? And I think that's going to be how they measure their success. Like, are people excited about this still whenever version 2 comes out, which, I don't know, maybe late next year, something like that.
I wanted to ask another thing about what I thought might be the killer app for this device was the ability to record and then watch spatial video. And I think, Jason, you did some stuff where you recorded it. Michael, were you able to record some spatial video, and what were your thoughts of then viewing that? Was it a different experience, or was it just like, oh, that's interesting, and then you kind of move on? Like, what was your thoughts on that?
It was, well, okay. I have been recording since the capability came out for the iPhone a couple months ago.
Yeah.
I've been like throughout the holidays, I've been taking some snapshots that I know I would want to revisit later.
Right.
And there was and I was like, my first day of using this, I was fine for the first hour. It was immersive. It was great. But then I saw a movie, a spatial video I made of my daughter, and she looks up at the camera and she says, "I love you, Daddy." And all of a sudden my face is leaking. Like, I'm like, I don't know what I ripped off the helmet. 'Cause I'm like, what was that? Because it looked like when you record with your iPhone, it's kind of eye level.
Yeah.
So the recording of her was eye level, as if, and it's kind of life size. When you do the immersive video, it's kind of life size. Mm-hmm. And she looked right to camera, and it looks like she's making eye contact. And it's like this perfect 3D representation of a perfect moment capture in time of my daughter. And it was overwhelming. You know, it was, I don't know. I don't even know. And I know
it does the same thing when you record spatial video on the Vision Pro itself. But yeah, you can use your iPhone 15 Pro. I did over the holidays. I did the same thing. I started pre-recording things, knowing this was coming up. Right. Went to the Audubon Zoo in New Orleans over holidays, and I'm taking some videos of animals. And it's really weird watching a tiger pace around in it's back to being life again. It's like a ghost. If you've ever seen a million sci-fi movies and stuff where they replay a memory from someone's brain they recorded, and it's kind of ghostly around the edges, but it's like somebody's memory. That's what it's like.
Yeah,
it's like watching a memory.
Yeah,
it's very Minority Report.
Yeah, it's really weird, and it's there's that impact. You're like, the resolution isn't as good as it could be, and the field of view isn't what it could be, but it's this little ghostly diorama window of like a straight up memory. The 3D is so convincing, and the sound is good, and you're just like, oh, I'm just like
replaying. The memory come to life again.
It's come to life, and it's really special. And it makes me want to record more things with spatial video, just knowing that, like, in the future, I'm going to want to see it this way. Yeah.
Is that something that could jumpstart a movement in this content creator side of things? Like, for example, when the iPhone came out and you saw people starting to take pictures of, selfies were a big thing, and people were starting to record video, and then the whole social media thing exploded where you had people just creating things with their phone. Can you see something similar happening to that? Or do we have to hit a tipping point of enough people out there having the device so that they could view it rather than just the small amount that might have?
I'm actually a little surprised that Apple hasn't released Final Cut Pro with the ability to edit spatial videos.
Yeah. Or anything. Like, there's no real way to edit them other than just, you can trim the edges on your iPhone or whatever. Okay. Like any video. And edits are weird. You don't want to jump perspective when you're viewing one of these things. So that's a tricky thing. But one of the nice things about this is that they brand it as Apple always does. They brand it spatial video and stuff like that. But this is standards based, and already it is working on Quest headsets. You can send somebody your spatial video. They can view it on their Quest headset.
Oh, that's cool.
They don't really have a way to record it yet. But recording is right now limited to iPhone 15 Pro, which very much limits the iPhone users who can record things.
But you would imagine that every future phone is going to have that ability then too.
Yeah,
whenever.
I think every iPhone 16 is going to have it.
Right.
I think because of the way the standards work, you're going to start seeing it on Samsung phones and stuff like that because you can play it on Quest devices and everything. So hopefully these things sort of coalesce around this standard.
Yeah.
It's not something so proprietary that Apple's got it locked down. And I think that's good. That's good news. They just need to, I don't know how flexible it is around things like field of view and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I do think this could be like the next sort of movie format for these spatial things.
I want to jump back to another potential business use case for it, which would be this idea of the personas in a Zoom meeting. Chris, I don't know if you have the B-roll ready that we had recorded earlier. Oh, okay. All right. So talk about the personas, and everyone has said that it's kind of creepy looking. Or not creepy, I guess weird would be the adjective that I would use.
Uncanny. You're definitely taking an uncanny valley visit.
Yeah, like what were, did you participate in some Zoom calls, and is it something where people look at it and go, wow, that's really weird looking, and then eventually they'll get used to it? Or is it going to be something where this is never going to take off, or until the scanning gets better?
So Apple has improved the Persona in version 1.1 of the OS, but it's not out yet. So I can tell you, as of the very first version, it's pretty something.
The version of the Persona you recorded from me is that 1.1 update.
Okay.
I've got that on my device.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
And that's with that. My Persona on the first version looked better than most people. It scanned me pretty well. I think I don't have a lot of crazy hair. It struggles with hair. It struggles with longer beards. It doesn't record enough of your sort of shoulders and body. The hands can't get close to your face. There's a ways to go. There's a ways to go on this. You look at
now, if you're wearing the headset, you guys just see us, right? You just see the cameras of like whatever we're showing you on the camera, right?
You see a floating zoom window. It's just another.
Yeah.
It's like your iPad Zoom, but like floating in space above you.
Okay, so on the screen now, just for your reference, we've got some of what the images look like. This was we recorded this ahead of time. So it's just this floating head, and there's some stuff that you can do with your hands that was interesting, and it doesn't necessarily, like, it's almost like you've got floating zombie hands. I want to say that, like the Pee Wee Herman type things. If you put, I'm surprised that they haven't done a skin where you then can become zombie, I guess. So it feels like it's weirder for the people watching you guys rather than what you're seeing during the conference, right, Jason?
Yeah, there's no option to do anything else. All the cameras are pointing out. So,
yep.
I mean, that's what you got. It's one of again, it's impressive but not good. It's like it's awkward. It looks weird. You look great, but like the mouth tracking is crazy. Like you can move your jaw around. It's moving your jaw, your eyebrows, your eyes. It's that it can track and make all this stuff on a 3D representation of you, and it syncs up and it looks right. Is
right,
so impressive, but like the fidelity is not there, and the hair looks wonky, especially if you have long hair. Like women with long hair, it's like this weird part of it animates and part of it doesn't, and it's like a helmet on your head, and they got a long way to go on certain things, right?
And the scanning is it does scan your face, so you can't change the way that, like, you can't become Godzilla, or you can't become a snake monster or whatever.
I'm surprised they didn't give you the option to just use your Memoji though.
Right.
Interesting.
Like been able to do on FaceTime and stuff for so long. Like,
well, because don't you think that Apple wants you to use this in a serious business video conference type setting? And the second you start adding cartoon characters and then you're going down that Mark Zuckerberg really uncanny valley type thing, right?
They could still make it an option though. It's
yeah,
the persona is important, sure, but it might be fun just to be a dolphin.
There's not a lot of stuff that Apple ships with a beta label on it.
Yeah.
Literally,
they
beta in a little bubble,
okay.
and Personas does say beta, and they it's clear.
Yeah.
So
well, could a third-party app developer then create something where then you can have a super, everyone has a superhero avatar or persona at some point? Or
I don't know what the frameworks available to developers are for things like eye and face tracking and stuff like that, which data they get. So I don't know how I don't know what limits there are for developers to sort of roll their own thing with stuff like that.
Okay. All right. I want to jump to another question. What is the dumbest thing that you've done with this device? There's been a couple of stories over the last few weeks where people are they're going out and they're riding on subway trains. I saw a video of one guy at a basketball game. Someone was allegedly driving with it, but then that turned out to be a fake story. And I think what you guys mentioned earlier on, where there's no 5G or wireless connection, are all of these things basically just fake that we're seeing of people doing things outside?
No, you can tether your you can use your you can use your iPhone as a hotspot, so it could connect to Wi-Fi like that.
Okay,
it works really well outside as you're stationary. People you see walking around doing stuff with their hands like they're manipulating it is fake. They're walking away from their windows. Windows don't stay with you. They stay in place in the world.
And that's the whole anchoring effect, right?
Away from their windows, and doing stuff. The travel mode is
you have to
just about
grab your window. You have to grab your window and take it with you, essentially.
Yeah, you have to carry it.
And they're not doing that.
But have you done anything dumb? Well, I guess, have you done anything dumb with this device yet? Or is it because you're like, well, wait, I don't want to do anything really bad where it's going to break this $3,500 machine?
I think the dumbest thing I did was, and it's not dumb. I mean, I worked out with it. I light weightlifting.
Okay.
I did elliptical. And I think the stupidest thing is I brought it into a sauna, not a steam sauna, an infrared sauna.
Okay.
So I've kind of put white sand. I was in the environment, white sand environment, feeling the heat.
Yep.
And about 15 minutes later, it overheated. And it's that the device was it wasn't shutting down. It still showed you the pass through, but it pretty much stopped calculating like anything extra.
Yeah.
While it was basically waiting to not be so hot. But that's I guess that's the silliest thing I've done with it.
That's more than me. I wish I had a good story for you, but I haven't done much more than just like take it to someone else's house, take it outside. I haven't used it walking around. I didn't go skateboarding with it on. I didn't try and do anything. It costs too much. It's not mine. The company bought it.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna do anything really dumb. But also the software doesn't do any of that stuff. It's not meant to be used on the go. Even if you have a wireless connection, your windows don't follow you.
Okay.
Your apps don't follow you.
And Mike Simon, do you think that the prevalence of these stories and media examples of people doing this dumb thing, does that hurt Apple in the short term? Or do you feel like that they need to do more warnings about, hey, idiot, don't drive with this thing on? Or
I think there's enough news stories out there where if you don't know what it is, you get it, that it's not meant to be worn while driving or even really walking around. But no, I think quite the opposite. I think the more people use their Vision Pros in dumb places, the better it is for Apple, because one day that's what we're going to be using it for.
Yeah, and I think we were talking when we did the show when the Vision Pro was announced. I think all three of us agreed. This was with Ken Mingus as well. We all agreed that it would be great for a fitness related device. such as what Mike was talking about when he was doing it in the gym with the elliptical, one that is not going to get sweat all over it, or it's going to be sweat resistant. Because then a
little lighter would be nice.
A lighter device as well would be interesting for working out, especially since Apple is so good on fitness stuff with the watch and some of the other fitness apps that they have.
And they have a service with all of those stuff built into it already. It's just a matter of time. I mean, as Jason said, weight and comfort is the number one thing that you need. You can't be thinking about how heavy this thing is on my face if you're going to be, even if you're just riding like a bicycle or something.
Sure.
But it's definitely another one of those will be, could be, should be things.
Okay.
I don't think there's ever been an Apple
too.
Yeah, and also
it doesn't sync with your Apple Watch at all. Like, it doesn't do anything, doesn't connect to it, doesn't connect to your iPhone at all. Like, when I get a call, I get a notification on my Mac, and I can take that call on my Mac. That doesn't happen on Vision Pro. I don't understand why.
Yeah.
Why can't I take this call on my here? It's
with the weight, how long can you wear it before you start feeling either fatigued or you're like, okay, I've got this heavy giant thing on my face? And then does it leave a mark? I guess with this, you get the ski goggle effect on it, or is that more of a thing where if you put it too tight, then you get the mark?
It's a heavy computer on your face.
Yeah.
You're going to get a mark if you leave it there for an extended amount of time.
Like what's the longest that you were able to kind of wear it then?
I can do a few hours at a time. I built up to a few hours, because it was, at half.
You have to work your way up, so it's
yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm a PlayStation 5 VR2 owner. So I'm used to gaming in VR, but still there's a learning. Your brain has to adjust. There's definitely an adjustment period for sure. It took me after a week of using it for me to switch bands. Because at first I was dealing with the weight and it was fine.
Yeah.
But after a week, it was just I was starting to get pressure headaches, so I had to switch the bands.
Yeah.
Which the
less attractive band is far better because it has the top strap. It's not just the weight. Like, you look at the number of grams, you're like, hey, a lot of things are this heavy. It's all in the way out in front of your face on the end of the gasket. That's where all the weight is. So you have to have it pushed fairly hard against your face to keep it in place as you turn and move your head around. And between that and just the light like beaming in your eyes, you got a couple screens right next to your face with these lenses. They can get fairly bright.
Yeah.
It's just kind of fatiguing, and you need to take it off.
Jason, you're wearing glasses. Did you have the special prescription glass inserts?
I do. It's just readers, but I do have the Zeiss insert readers.
Okay.
Those are great, man. They just drop in, magnetically snap into place, no problem.
Because that's always the big fear for me with wearing a lot of these VRs. I can't get my eyes to adjust unless I don't want to have my glasses on while I'm wearing a headset, I guess.
You can't really wear your glasses with this. Like, if you could try to get them fit in there, but if your glasses, the gasket doesn't leave a lot of room, and if your glasses are touching the lens in there, one of them's going to get scratched.
Okay.
And you don't want that on either.
Right.
But they need those prescription inserts because the eye tracking has to look through those lenses and has to know where your eyes are looking, and it has to have the proper.
I remember some early VR stuff. You could sort of focus like a camera lens type thing, or binoculars.
It's as much about the eye tracking as it is focus. It's about the sensors knowing where you're looking by having your vision corrected what there was shining through.
Yeah. Okay.
It's somewhat limiting for prescription. There are some reports of people they submit their prescription and they're like, sorry, we can't support that right now.
It's just too wacky.
Yeah, it's too right. So they're being very careful about who can use it and the experience. As far like even when you put it on, like it actually like the inside lenses adjust to the position of your eyes on your face. It's not just a dial as you were talking about, like they actually move. So they've taken a lot of this into consideration, but there's a lot of people, or I don't know about a lot, but I've seen those more than a handful of reports that say like, I wanted one, but I can't get it yet because it won't make my prescription.
Right. And I've got progressive lenses too, so I'm pretty sure that
I believe that they do that.
They do? Okay.
Yeah.
I have progressives because you're actually not ever looking at anything at a different distance. You're literally looking at a screen image from your face. So all you have to do is whatever prescription is necessary for you to read things up close.
Okay.
Is what you're going to go with. So for me, I use progressives too. You're going to use readers. Right.
Okay. Jason, there was a quote from your review that I really liked, and this was on the subhead. It basically says Vision Pro needs to demonstrate why it must exist. Can you expand on that? Like, as you're looking at this whole ecosystem and where we go from here, like, you feel at the moment Apple has not done that yet, or just needs to do more of that?
Yeah, Apple and app developers. I touched on this a few minutes ago, but it's after the wow factor wears off and you're like, gee, and you really feel like, oh, wow, this is the future. And you start trying to do stuff and you sit down and you open up a window here and a window there and a window there. First of all, you start going, well, where am I going to put all this stuff? Because there's no real window management. You can't really put windows on top of each other and still you're trying to find places around you to put all these windows. But once you do that, you go like, this doesn't really do anything I can't do on my Mac or my iPhone or my iPad. Like, this window that I have open is Safari, but besides being much slower to type, like it's not different or better than Safari on any of these other things, or messages, or, pick an app, name an app. There's even a bunch of the third-party ones. So the media consumption stuff, watching videos, 3D movies, the spatial videos, that is absolutely killer. And you're going like, yeah, I get it. I see. Sure. I wish I could share this with somebody, but like, I get it.
Right.
But for everything else, it's not actually easier, faster, whatever than your just opening a window on your Mac or using your iPhone or something. And a lot of that comes down to just the apps not being there. And some of that comes down to, like we said, software things like you can't share a virtual space with somebody. But a great example is the Clock app. The Clock app is just the iPad app. Apple doesn't have a spatial version of the Clock app. Well, it would be nice if they did.
Well, what would you want the spatial version to do?
Well, I would love to be able to set a timer and just, like, you can set multiple timers. Well, I would love to be able to take a timer and put it over something, because things anchor in the world, and then another timer over something else, and then a timer. And when the timer goes off, I get a visual clue and spatial audio, make it sound like that alarm is actually ringing over there, and I can go over and turn it off. That would be an example of, I can't do that with my iPhone. I can't do that with my iPad. Right now, there's a cooking app, and I don't remember which one it is now, but they demoed where Crouton.
Okay, so they looked at a stove and there was like a timer above the pot, a timer above the
Crouton lets you spawn. It's a subscription app, and it does let you spawn timers, and you can put them in places. But of course, it also warns you, don't cook with this headset on, which is probably good advice, because you don't want to get the outside gunked up with oil and everything. So
I figured you were just going to be like knocking a pot over and having it spill on you or something, but it's more about
any of that. Yeah. Any of that could be bad. Do not cook with this thing on. But those are examples of, from both Apple's apps and third-party apps, so many of them are not really any different than the same version of the app you would run on your Mac, your iPhone, your iPad. And that's not really a reason to get a spatial computer, just to float it in a window somewhere around me. They need things that are like, I can only do this with a spatial computer.
Right.
And all the media stuff is like that. Keynote, great example was Keynote's practice hall. There needs to be a lot more of that.
Right. Now, Mike Dagonia, it feels like you're a little bit more enthusiastic about the future than Jason is. Jason feels like he's in the the realism space of the first product, the first iteration, but you seemed a little bit more enthusiastic when we did our kind of our opening statements. Do you see yourself using this on a regular daily basis? Not because you're just reviewing this for Computer World or because you're doing it for a work thing, but do you see yourself in your everyday life now, like, oh, I'm going to do this, I'm going to use this again? My PlayStation VR version 1 for the PS4 has been sitting on my shelf for the better half of 2+ years at least, and I never got the second one. So, like, how do you feel like you're going to be using this on a regular basis, even if more hardware comes out later?
See, I think it comes down to user preference. Do you want to work on a Mac, or do you want to work on an iPad, or do you want to use your phone, or do you want to use this new headset?
Yeah,
and I think this offers a compellingly different way to interact with the data that you're accustomed to now, or the data and apps that you're already accustomed to. Now, what makes this compelling is, again, the fact that it blends the reality with the data, with the virtual. That's what this is. I think that's what this product and its strength, its limitations, it's all of it in one is the fact that it's Apple's spatial computing product. It's their very first one. It has a lot of things that are missing. This is Apple releasing the iPhone without copy paste.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's just still super early days. And for this product,
Yeah, this is what, week 2?
yeah,
3.
right, exactly. But
Well, that's the problem. Tech media, we're all like instant. We need instant judgments here.
I get super frustrated by if I'm trying to do real work on this thing, even if I take a keyboard and a touchpad to it so I can do text entry, I'm going to get super frustrated by how limiting the Files app is, because it's basically like the iPad's Files app, and I need something that's more like Finder on a Mac.
Sure.
But again, that's just a software thing. That's just a software update thing. That's not
Right.
like this headset's bad. That's like they still have some work to do.
No, I mean, look, as soon as they start, releasing lighter headsets, maybe they branch out the products. So you have a pro and a consumer version. Maybe like a headset like Tony Stark. It's just the glasses with see through.
Right.
Transparent OLED. I don't know. Something like that. And again, you can have the Vision Pro, which is like the entire goggles, or you can have the consumer version, a light version of something like that.
Vision Light, Vision Sport. I could see them coming out with those names at some
Vision
point.
Air. It's going to be Apple Vision Air.
Oh, Vision Air. They've
already got
all
the
of
names.
it, whether it's useful, the longevity, all of it comes down to the direction Apple takes with it and what developers do with it.
Right.
Because right now you're able to present real-time data in line with everything that you're seeing. You have a computer that you don't need to physically interact with anymore. You can use gestures in the air. Where are they going to take that?
Right. And
I'm excited for that, but that's one of those things that it's either going to go really far or be very limited. And we're going to find out. We're going to find out really soon.
And Mike Simon, I just want to get your last thoughts on this. Does Apple have to get that price down from $3,500 into that, like you said, $1,499? You would be in there in an instant. Does the Vision Pro 2? It feels like whatever new version is going to be the same price, and then they'll just knock off the price from the other ones, like they do with Macs and stuff. Or do you think that we might see a lower price for the next version?
I think price is the least of the barriers
Really?
that Apple has to adoption right now.
Wow.
Had they released a version that was $1,499,
Yeah.
it wouldn't do anything that Apple wants to do. So I think Apple's willing to sacrifice adoption
Okay.
to put forth this is like the ultimate headset, cutting edge in every regard. Whether you've used an Oculus and a PlayStation VR or not, you can put this thing on and say, like, I don't see pixels, the interaction with the environment. So the biggest wow factor I had, when you put it on in the store, you're sitting at a table and the home screen pops up. First, for one, it's a familiar home screen with apps in a grid, but it rests above the table and there's a little shadow on the table and it is precision perfect. Like, it is there. in the world as if it's just another object that you just created. That's the experience that Apple wanted to create and to get there with version 1, it had to be $3,500. I agree with you. I don't think version 2 is going to be any cheaper. I think it's going to be a $3,500 to $4,000 headset for probably the next 5 years. Oof. I don't think that the priority is creating one that is ready for mass adoption until Vision Pro is ready for mass adoption. This isn't the iPhone where if they create a $200 one next year, 10 million people are going to buy one. I don't think anyone's going to buy it at the lower price either.
But yeah, I think you were right that it's going to split. There's going to be a Pro version that is $3,500. There's going to be something that does what this does essentially, maybe without the external display or something that's a little cheaper.
Maybe we'll get plastic. We'll get plastic, Jason.
It would be nice if it was. I mean, I know Apple's allergic to plastic, but that would shave a lot of weight off of this thing.
Right. All right. Yeah. Go ahead. Any final thoughts? I don't think
Apple's crazy enough to think that they could sell tens of millions a year of something that costs $3,500. They know that eventually it's got to get to be iPad price,
All right. We are out of time, so I wanted to, again, thanks Michael Dagonia, Mike Simon, and Jason Cross for joining us on Today in Tech today. And we'll, maybe we'll catch up in 6 months or next year and just see if you're still using it. I have my doubts, but you guys seem to be really excited about it at this point. And again, if they do a software update and fix some of these minor issues, or not minor, but these issues that you have with it, then I could see using it on a daily basis. So again, thanks for joining us on the show.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
All right. That's all the time we have for today's episode. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, add any thoughts you have below. Join us every week for new episodes of Today in Tech. I'm Keith Shaw. Thanks for watching.